She thought she had found love. A kind, beautiful European woman, vulnerable yet hopeful, found herself entwined in a seemingly perfect romance. He introduced himself as a diamond merchant, sophisticated and successful, moving between continents, speaking with charm and promise. In his soft voice, she heard dreams realized. He sent messages that felt intimate, called when he said he would, shared stories of importance, of danger, of shared futures. Each word felt like a lifeline, each promise a doorway. Then, the nightmares began. One day, she discovered she had lost nearly 500,000 dirhams, about $130,000. Her savings wiped out, her financial security vanished. But this wasn't just a loss of money. This was a plunge into panic attacks, into medical interventions, into the darkest corners of shame and self-doubt. Yet this is not a story of surrender. It is a story of reclamation. She began to unravel the layers of deception and discovered this man wasn't just a liar. He was a criminal. Every message, a manipulation. Every illusion crafted to empty her life. Despite the trauma, she fought back. She traced his forged identity. She alerted authorities, and she helped bring him to justice. This is more than a scam, it's a saga of survival, grit, and eventual justice. She lived a life known by few and seen by many, a stable job, close friendships, a routine built to avoid change. Because change for her had always been a thief. It had stolen her husband too soon, leaving her with silence that could never be filled, and a house that still smelled faintly of his aftershave years later. Widowed too young, she didn't collapse. She survived. But survival has its own price. It leaves scars you can't see, a hollow that lingers beneath the surface. Despite the composure she carried into every meeting, every social gathering, loneliness trailed behind her like a shadow. It visited late at night, when the world was hushed, when the walls pressed in, and memories came whispering. She yearned, not for pity, not for someone to fix her grief, but for companionship. A voice to meet hers in the quiet, a hand that reminded her she was still alive. So, one evening, after pouring herself a glass of wine she didn't really want, she logged into a dating app. Not the casual kind, but one marketed for serious professional connections. People like her, purposeful, guarded, careful with their hearts. And then, his message arrived. "You seem genuine. I see your strength," it read. His name was Karim. A diamond merchant from Dubai, he said. A businessman with global ties, with stakes in Antwerp's glittering trade docks. His profile was immaculate. A man in his 50s with neatly cropped salt and pepper hair, photographed beside yachts, at dinners lit by chandeliers shaped like cut gems. There was elegance in his posture, intelligence in his eyes. She was cautious. Life had taught her that appearances deceive. But his words disarmed her. He wasn't overly flattering. He wasn't crude. He wrote with patience, his tone almost reverent. "My ex-wife passed away years ago," he confided after a week of nightly chats. "I raised my daughter alone, but she lives now with family in Geneva. My life is scattered across continents, and yet, when I speak with you, I feel anchored." The vulnerability in his voice softened her defenses. For the first time in years, someone seemed to need her. They began speaking nightly. She waited for the little chime of his messages, the way she once waited for her husband's key in the lock. They spoke of everything: her garden, his business trips, her late husband's love for jazz, his worries about dangerous rivals in the diamond trade. He told her of shipments delayed at customs, of investors breathing down his neck, of men in expensive suits making threats in hotel corridors. His life sounded thrilling, precarious, dangerous even, and yet he shared it with her, as if she alone could steady him. She listened. She worried. She cared. "You're my star," he told her one night, his voice low, tender, intimate. "When I close my eyes after meetings, I see your smile. You give me the strength to go on." She blushed, her heart skipping in a way she thought it never would again. Her friends noticed the change too. "You've got a glow about you," one teased over coffee. Another raised an eyebrow, asking, "So, who's the mystery man?" She laughed it off, brushing it aside with vague answers, unwilling to break the fragile magic by explaining too much. But late at night, when she closed her eyes, she imagined what life could look like with him. A new chapter, a second chance. The ache of widowhood soothed at last. She thought she was finally living again. But what she didn't know, what no one around her knew, was that this was not the beginning of love. It was the final act in a carefully choreographed play, a romance built not on trust, but on sand. And soon, the tide would come in. The early exchanges were full of thoughtful gestures. A poem arriving before dawn, short but tender. A song dedication posted online, tagged with her name, making her feel seen in a way that pierced her solitude. Then came the first small gift, flowers from a local florist, unexpectedly delivered to her apartment door. The card was handwritten, the words precise. "For the light you bring to my world." She smiled. She saved the note in a box. She replayed the song on nights when fatigue weighed heavy after work. The romance felt real, almost cinematic. He seemed attentive in ways no one else had been, always anticipating her moods, always reaching out at the exact moment she needed reassurance. But beneath that tenderness, hidden in shadows, was manipulation. Subtle, strategic, carefully timed. It began as a story of circumstance. He now spoke of a shipment stranded in Dubai's port, millions in diamonds immobilized by paperwork and bureaucracy. His tone was urgent, rehearsed but persuasive, carrying the weight of helplessness. She felt his panic through the phone. "If I can't fix this, everything is ruined. We're ruined." She told herself, "I'm helping someone I love." She rationalized the first transfer as nothing more than a loan, a gesture of loyalty. A few thousand dirhams, no big deal. He would repay her soon, but repayment never came. Instead, the crises multiplied like smoke curling into every corner of her life. Customs revisions, shipment impounds, sudden freezes at international banks. Each obstacle arrived wrapped in fresh urgency, and each time she muscled through another transfer, convincing herself it was temporary. 10,000 became 50, then 100. The numbers swelled as her emotions deepened, the figures in her bank account shrinking in tandem with her sense of control. He told her he loved her. He told her he needed her. The more she gave, the higher he raised the stakes. When she slowed, he grew distant, the warmth fading into calculated silence. When she hesitated, he whispered fears of losing her forever to the complications of his dangerous, fragile world. That fear cut through her resistance. Her guard fell away. Affection now meant responding. Love now meant sacrifice. Each transfer was followed by a digital trail. Email confirmations, transfer IDs, screenshots stamped with what looked like corporate seals. He showed her invoices with serial numbers, cargo receipts with watermarked signatures. Proof, she thought. Proof he was real. Proof the crisis was real. But all of it was empty. Fabricated. A performance she didn't yet see for what it was. And still, he soothed her with the same refrain. "Hold on. We're so close." A lull followed. Short, private moments where her body craved rest, but her mind spun in anxious cycles. High emotions began to feed on isolation. Nights blurred into therapy sessions where she tried and failed to explain the confusion clawing at her. Her psychiatrist, kind, methodical, heard the tremors in her voice. He diagnosed trauma. He prescribed medication to quiet the panic. He urged her to raise red flags with the authorities. She nodded. She listened. She left with pills in her purse and warnings in her ears. But when it came time to act, hesitation anchored her. Doesn't justice feel bruising? Doesn't reporting mean admitting you were fooled? Shame kept her silent. The unraveling was quiet at first. She checked her accounts one morning and realized there was nothing left. Every dirham gone. The apartment felt smaller, airless, when she understood she was bankrupt. And then, as if orchestrated, he vanished. His messages slowed, then stopped. The warmth of his reassurances cooled into silence. The gifts never came again. The man she thought loved her flickered into nothing, like a myth she had once believed too desperately. That moment was not dramatic. It was not cinematic. It was a pause, a crack opening in the foundation of her life. She sat alone, staring at the empty inbox, the unanswered calls. She breathed once, shallow, and then came collapse. After the disappearance, she refused to crawl into silence. Shame is loud, but so is survival. In the quiet nights she sat alone, her phone glowing with old messages. The same messages that once made her feel cherished now stung like poison. She read them again and again, this time not through the eyes of a woman in love, but as an investigator, searching for cracks. And the cracks were everywhere. She noticed account numbers that didn't match his supposed name, transfers that routed through unfamiliar banks, IP logs from countries he had never claimed to be in, contradictory stories about his business. One day he was in Antwerp, the next in Johannesburg, yet the timestamps betrayed him. Her pulse quickened with each discovery. This wasn't a relationship gone wrong. This was architecture, deception carefully built, designed to collapse on her. Then came the photographs. She ran his image through reverse searches. Results trickled back. His face wasn't his alone. It lived on online forums dedicated to scams. Women in France, in Germany, and Italy had posted warnings. Some called him a diamond trader, others a businessman, others still a diplomat. The names changed, the storylines shifted, but the face, the gestures, the script, they were identical. Her heart sank. She was not his only victim. She was one of many. Instead of despair, she felt a flicker of defiance. She reached out. First a hesitant email to a woman in Lyon, then another to someone in Berlin. Replies came back, hesitant, wounded, but relieved. She wasn't alone. They compared notes, the same romantic promises, the same fabricated emergencies, the same carefully timed vanishings. Soon they built a web of evidence, emails forwarded, screenshots aligned, SIM cards cross-referenced. It was meticulous work, collaborative survival. And slowly, the pattern became undeniable. He was not a man. He was a ghost with many masks, setting traps across continents. Armed with this dossier, she approached the authorities in Dubai. She expected dismissal, a shrug. But this time, they listened. She presented her findings with precision. Forged bank records, timestamp inconsistencies, his recycled identity. She brought not only financial evidence but also her psychiatric records, proof of the panic attacks, of the emotional collapse. Fraud was not just about stolen money. It was about stolen health, stolen peace. Evidence was evidence, and hers was unshakable. The case grew. Cyber police opened files. Interpol was looped in. He had crossed borders too many times, left digital trails too wide to remain hidden. The investigation stretched across Europe and the Middle East. While her savings were gone, her voice now carried the weight of an international inquiry. Months later, at a cybersecurity conference in Dubai, she stood before strangers and told her story, live. She had once been consumed by shame. Certain people would mock her for being foolish. But now, standing beneath the harsh stage lights, her shame was gone. She spoke of loneliness, of how vulnerability can be manipulated, of the psychiatric damage fraud inflicts, and she spoke of her determination, how she had followed him into corners of the dark web, uncovered his forged passports, exposed his stolen identities. Each sentence wasn't just her truth, it was a warning for others. Her courage rippled outward. Attendees applauded not her loss, but her fight. She had transformed humiliation into testimony. And then, one day, It came. The message she had waited for. Arrest. The man she once believed to be her lover was captured in another country, travelling on false documents. His bags contained multiple phones, fake passports, even pre-written love letters ready to ensnare the next victim. This was never just a scam. It was a war against silence. The investigation unfolded like a puzzle with pieces scattered across continents. Detectives began mapping his aliases, each name carefully chosen to sound trustworthy, dependable, sometimes even aristocratic. He wasn't just Michael or David. He was Colonel Richard, Dr. Harris, Captain Jameson. Every persona came with backstories, graduation photos stolen from strangers' Facebook profiles, military badges lifted from obscure blogs, even wedding rings photoshopped onto stock images. Forensic accountants traced wire transfers through a labyrinth of shell bank accounts. Money was routed from local banks into international clearinghouses, then washed through cryptocurrency wallets that flickered alive just long enough to accept deposits before vanishing into silence. Cyber teams tracked IP addresses bouncing across VPNs and proxy servers. They discovered patterns, logins that began in Lagos, leapt to Amsterdam, and settled for just seconds on a cafe Wi-Fi in Spain. And yet, the human side of the case was harder to chart. Each victim told a story not just of stolen money, but of stolen years. Their voices cracked as they described promises of marriage, talks about forever homes, long-distance bedtime calls. The losses weren't just financial, they were emotional implosions. One woman admitted she had sold her late husband's car to help the man she believed she loved. Another had borrowed against her retirement. The shame, investigators noted, was often heavier than the debt. She, his primary victim, was called again and again to courtrooms to provide the anchor testimony. Standing there, her hands trembled, but her voice, though fragile, carried weight. She was no longer speaking only for herself, she was speaking for the dozens whose stories paralleled her own. "He told me," she said quietly, "that love means sacrifice, that if I truly believed in us, I would support him. And I did. I gave him everything." The defense lawyer tried to fracture her credibility. "Weren't you aware that people online lie?" he asked with sharp condescension. "Isn't it true you wanted to believe in romance so badly that you ignored the signs?" Her answer silenced the room. Hope is not a crime. Love is not stupidity. What he did was a crime. Digital records backed her testimony with clinical precision. Timestamps from late-night chats matched perfectly with withdrawal times on her account. Metadata embedded in emails revealed inconsistencies. He claimed to be writing from London, but the server's footprint pulsed from West Africa. Bank logs displayed a synchronized dance of deposits and immediate withdrawals, leaving accounts bone dry within hours. Piece by piece, the facade collapsed, but the scammer sat in court with carefully cultivated poise. When asked directly, he denied it all. "I was in love," he said, shaking his head as though the world had misunderstood him. "These women, they gave me money because they cared. I never forced anyone." His words were slippery, but the evidence was solid. Court-appointed trauma counselors explained to the jury why these cases matter, why they cut deeper than ordinary theft. Emotional fraud, they testified, isn't just about bank balances, it corrodes trust, self-worth, even sanity. Victims often withdraw from friends and family, afraid of ridicule. Some spiral into depression, a few never recover. She herself testified to the aftermath. Panic attacks, months of psychiatric treatment, the gnawing silence when she realized her phone would never again light up with his name. "I wasn't grieving a real man," she admitted. "I was grieving an illusion, and somehow that hurt more." The judge leaned forward, listening intently. Jurors scribbled notes, their expressions flickering between disbelief and anger. And then came the moment, the one question that broke beyond the walls of the courtroom and reached every soul who heard it. What would you do if someone you loved asked for money, blindfolded your judgment, and then vanished? The silence that followed was not ordinary silence. It was heavy, reflective, as if the question had been etched into the air itself. Some jurors avoided eye contact. Others stared down at their papers, shaken by the thought of how close they too might have come to such a trap. The investigation stretched on. Lower courts, appeals, fresh testimony from victims who found the courage to step forward after seeing her stand tall. Every month brought another layer of evidence, another confirmation that this was not a single mistake, but a deliberate web spun over years. And though justice had not yet been declared, the walls were closing in. The day of the verdict felt like standing at the edge of a storm finally passing. For months, she had carried the weight of doubt, wondering if anyone would believe her, if the courts would take her pain seriously, if the man who had stripped her of both her savings and her trust would walk away untouched. When the judge finally read out the conviction, it was as if a long-held breath escaped her lungs. The scammer was found guilty: fraud, exploitation, cross-border deception, and sentenced to years behind bars. No diamonds, no romance, no future together. Only a cold prison cell waiting for him, built not on false promises but on consequences. But there was no champagne, no fist raised in triumph. Instead, tears ran freely down her cheeks. They weren't the bitter tears she had shed when she realized she'd been betrayed. They were heavier, layered with relief, grief, and the fragile beginning of healing. Betrayal may burn the heart, but it doesn't end it. Healing, though slow, is possible. Standing before strangers who hung on her every word, she no longer looked like a victim. She looked like a survivor turned protector. A woman who took her trauma and rebuilt it into a shield, not only for herself, but for anyone else who might fall prey to the illusion of love sold by a scammer. Her story closed, but her mission did not. She continues to speak, to teach, to warn. Because for her, this was never only about reclaiming what she had lost. It was about ensuring that others never have to stand where she once stood, staring into the empty space where trust used to live. Her message is simple but unforgettable. Love can be weaponized, trust must be earned slowly, and even after the deepest betrayal, recovery is still possible. Up next, a wife faked her daughter's death and lived a lie until justice caught up.